Ah. There is a theory that it takes 10,000 hours to become an expert at something. The problem with that is, one, who the hell has 10,000 hours spare? And two, being an expert is just showing off anyway. Far more interesting is, can you take 500 days and become above average at something? A more realistic time frame and level of awesomeness, because as we know on this channel, above average is still pretty awesome. Well, the answer is yes, you can, because I've done it. April of 2020 and I was a non-cyclist, which by definition makes me below average. Around 500 days later, and ZwiftPower has officially rated me a B category rider, which, given there's 4 categories, A, B, C, D, its an alphabetical system, puts me in the top half, and I think that now qualifies me as very much above average. Today, I'm going to put some slightly more specific numbers on that transformation by doing the same cycling fitness test that I did last April. But first, let me just quickly elaborate on where I was and now where I am. So last year, we are 1 month into COVID-19 lockdown, and that meant my exercise was limited to running, while my neighbours timed me to ensure I did not exceed the government recommended 1 hour outside the home and put the health of the entire nation at peril, which was great exercise for them too, because twitching their net curtains while wolfing down pizza at the same time was more activity than they were used to. Now, back in February 2020, I had sold my home gym setup because I joined the local gym, which was now closed in April. So I was looking for something physical that I could do in here. And one of my non-pizza eating neighbours, who is into his cycling, suggested a Wahoo kicker bike. I said I have zero interest in cycling. He said it tilts up and down automatically. I said I'm getting me one of them. And I was hooked. Now, when I say a non-cyclist, this is what I mean. My last road bike was a Doors Disco that I did my paper round on when I was 12, in 1985. How long ago was that? This was the #1 movie that year. This was #2.
Mission accomplished.
I don't know what #3 was, but in 1985, Steve Guttenberg would have been in it. Now, it was a road bike, but it wasn't what today would be called aero, because A, my mother made me use one of these, and B, I was carrying my own body weight in newspapers. That bike got handed down to my brother in 1987, Beverly Hills Cop 2, Platoon, probably still Steve Guttenberg. I never sat on a bike again until I was an adult and got a mountain bike. In case you're thinking, so you are a good cyclist, let me stop you there. I once went over a jump on my mountain bike where the front wheel and back wheel were momentarily both off the ground at the same time. I had to stop and high-five the dog, I was that excited. I'm not a good cyclist. So my bike history is limited to say the least. I didn't feel like I was missing out. My perception was that cycling would make me skinny, the clothing looked ridiculous, and my mother would still insist on various safety measures. But when I got the Wahoo kicker, I realised that cycling had gotten cool. From the shoes that don't have laces, clippy shoes just arrived, to an excuse to buy another big ass TV, maybe a little shelf under here. This might be a hobby I can get into. So the first thing I did was download the Sufferfest app so I could take what I was told was the best all-round fitness test you could get. Here is me explaining that test back then. Full frontal, the 4DP fitness test, the only test that exposes every aspect of your unique physiology in a single hour, blah-de-blah-de-blah. The test will provide you with a complete personal power profile, identify your rider type. Beginner. So I did the test, got my results, and we will come back to those a bit later on. Now, what have I done since then? I spent a couple of months riding with the Sufferfest app. By June 2020 though, I decided to enter an Ironman, as you do, and buy a real bike. So I switched to Trainer Road for a more triathlon-based training approach, and then towards the end of the year, when Ironman looked very unlikely to happen in 2021, I moved to Zwift for fun, and hated it. There is nothing good there that I can think of. Am I going to ever race on Zwift again? I may well be done with Zwift. And since then I've just ridden on it over and over and slowly gotten a bit better at Zwift. How often? Not that often. I try and do maybe 2 or 3 rides a week. Sometimes they're a week off, sometimes I do 4 or 5 rides. There's no real structure. Some days I do sprints that I love, and some days I do huge climbs that I suck at. And I should add, 99% of that cycling has all been done in here. I do have a Cervelo P3X for the Ironman. That is now June of next year, but I've ridden that about 7 times total and not once this year. It is purely to use in the 6 months run up to the Ironman, then race on it. Although I do have a duathlon in 4 weeks, so I should probably go and at least check the tyres or something. Now in terms of overall fitness, I also run. Again though, not much structure there, sometimes a 5k, sometimes a 100k. And I lift weights to maintain my size, which is actually pretty contrary to running and cycling, but some of the events that I do will have photographers there, so gun show. Okay, that's me. Where has 500 days of all that got me? If you follow this channel, then you'll know that a few weeks ago I implemented a sort of self-imposed ban from Category C sprint races on Zwift because I was starting to win the really short ones. I wanted more of a challenge in Category B. I then did a couple of slightly longer B races and did not come last. And then last week did a B category medium distance race while recovering from my 100-kilometre ultramarathon and stayed pretty much mid-pack, 6 out of 12, but only a few seconds behind the winner. I was really pleased with that, and even cooler was that when I looked at my results in ZwiftPower, it had upgraded me to a B category rider officially. That is it. Unless I get sick, injured or old, none of which I intend to do, I am done with Category C races, whatever the distance, and therefore probably not going to see a podium for a while as a result. So what a good time to jump back on the bike and run that Sufferfest 4DP test again and just see what 500 days, give or take, has done to my overall cycling fitness. That was all this morning, so while you watch me warm up from earlier, let me recap on my past performance. And yes, I did change the strap on my Garmin to match my triathlon suit. We are not messing about today. So in April last year, no idea what I'm doing, had ridden the bike 3 times only before I took the test. These were my numbers. 5-second power 1260 watts, 1 minute power 447, 5 minute power 235, FTP, so 20 minute power 199, and a lactate threshold heart rate of 145. Now I was not super happy with those results, especially the 5 and 20 minute test. So 2 months later in June 2020, I did the test again. I got 1364 for 5 seconds, 627 for a minute, 330 for 5 minutes, 255 for my FTP, and that lactate threshold up to 156. So the numbers were up across the board, and also these numbers here are the watts per kilo figure, which is going to be relevant later on. And also, in case you weren't sure, lactate threshold is a bit of a guess on the part of the software at the heart rate you can maintain without lactic acid building up so fast that your body can't flush it out, which leads to a decline in ability and performance if that happens. The fitter you are, the higher a heart rate you can hold while still efficiently dealing with lactic buildup and dispersal. Boring bit over, let's get into the test. So, coming up first, after a bit of a warm-up, there are 2 goes at the 5-second test. Flat out effort. Quick tour around the screen as well. Distance you have ridden, current heart rate, recommended wattage and actual wattage, recommended cadence and actual cadence, level of exertion measured out of 10, speed, time spent on the test so far, time left to go, time till the next section within the test, the different coloured bars representing those different sections, and a little video to motivate you and give instruction during the test as well. Okay, here we go, winding it up so we are at the start of the 5-second interval and then flat out just go, go, go hard. Now you get 2 goes at this, a few minutes apart, because timing your gear change and getting your build up right is tricky. So we can jump to the second attempt in a moment. And this was the one part of the test that I was not confident in doing that well in compared to last year for a couple of reasons. Firstly, I was much heavier last year. I bounced around between 100 and 108 kilograms all year. That's almost 240 pounds. And the heavier you are, the more weight you can simply mash the pedals with. It is as easy as that. Right now I'm about 95 kilos, so a good 5% down. Also, my calves are still really sore from the 100-kilometre ultramarathon I ran 10 days ago. On steady, consistent efforts, the pain is fine, but doing these sprints was uncomfortable on them. Right, another short rest and then the toughest test of all, 5-minute effort. Now I had 2 targets here, obviously 330 watts from last June, but I also knew that ZwiftPower had me down for 386 watts over 5 minutes more recently. So my aim was try and hold over 400 watts as much as possible. And after the 2 sprints, it was not easy. Heart rate bumping up against 180, calves were on fire. This test was horrible. You then get another short break, which includes 2 minutes off the bike walking around to loosen the legs up before going for the 20-minute test. My only objective here above 300. I know I can ride around 3.2 watts per kilo for a while. That's the result that's got me bumped up on Zwift to being a rubbish B-cat rider from being a good C-cat rider. So at 95 kilos, low 300s was the target. Now that test is tough, but it's also pretty comparable to a 20-minute Zwift race. So it's the sort of riding that I'm most used to. It's actually more mentally tough to stay focused on the effort than it is physical. Right, last one, the 1 minute blast. The idea here is you sprint as hard as you can for 15 seconds and then hold on as best you can. They expect you to fade a lot over the minute. You just have to try not to. So I go off around 800 watts, which I do hold for a good 20 seconds, and then just desperately try to stay at the right side of 500 watts until the end. Of all the tests, this one is the most brutal, especially coming after all the others. Okay, results time. 5-second test first of all. Last year, April, 1260. June, 1364. Today, 1277. Almost the same as when I first sat on the bike. This video is not going to plan. Now, if I add in watts per kilo, you can see that I am actually pretty much comparable to last year, but still no improvement. Is that my sore calves? Is it something to do with the setup of the bike in here? Who knows? But it is crazy to think that despite 500 days of training, I have not got any better. Maybe I'm just older. I should also add, in case you're thinking, why do this test when your legs are still hurting from doing that 100k run? Because I have a crammed diary of racing and no other time. In fact, it had to be today, Tuesday, because Friday I'm leaving for a Spartan race in Scotland on Saturday, and this test is quite a tiring thing to do any closer to that long distance race. If you're now thinking, why would you try and cram it in at all ahead of something like that? You're just no fun at parties, are you? 1 minute test last year, 447, 627, today 649, and a pretty decent watt per kilo jump up as well, so that is all good. 5 minute test. Last year 235 and 330, today 392 and over 4 watts a kilo, although still annoyingly shy of that 400 watt mark. 20 minute FTP test, April last year an embarrassing 199, June was 255 and today 307, which sounds about right, 3.2 watts per kilo. And lastly, my lactate threshold heart rate up from 145 to 156 to 164 today. My resting heart rate currently sits around low 40s, so it's quite cool to know that despite not being far off 50, I still have a pretty big range between resting heart rate and the point where things become unsustainable. Oh, and while we're looking at figures, as a guide to how draining doing the 4DP test is, when I run, I expect to burn between 700 and 900 calories an hour. When I cycle, a physically easier task, I expect to burn between 600 and 800 calories. Garmin had me at over 900 calories for a 1 hour 7 minute session today, which obviously includes some pretty easy recovery breaks in there as well. So a pretty intense workout overall. Okay, that is it. Hope that is interesting. What's the moral? Spend 500 days doing something and you will get better at it, even end up possibly above average. Unless being a fat lump was helpful, like it was with those 5-second sprints, and you're no longer quite such a fat lump, then you'll be worse. And for anybody thinking I cannot possibly label myself an above average cyclist when I've ridden an outdoor road bike 7 times in my adult life and everything I'm basing this on has been assessed in my garage, you are definitely no fun at parties. As always, if you have any questions, any feedback, want to know just how many different colour straps I have for my Garmin, stick it all in the comments down below. Then give the video a like because it is hugely beneficial to me and the channel if you do. Subscribe if you haven't already done so and are finding this content fun to watch. And the next video is going to be the rather late but final episode in my 8-week fat loss challenge. It has taken me some weeks to work out how I feel about the process and how it went, but I'm finally there. And after that, with the results from my Spartan race this Saturday coming, which will include a drive back home from Scotland, during which I will consume a staggering amount of service station junk food. Oh, and if you want to know where to get one of these, message me. My mum probably still has it in her loft.